Hello? Can you hear
Hello,
me?
Mimi. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How
How
are
are
you
you doing?
tonight?
I'm pretty
I'm good. I'm a
good.
little nervous.
Why?
This is like my first ever anything. So, yeah. Like I never go live, I never do anything. So, getting starting a podcast, I figured would kind of be getting me out of my comfort zone. So, getting a
Yeah.
little bit more confidence on doing shit that I'm not used to. So, yeah.
Well, that's part of the reason that I suggested it on stereo, because we could have a conversation, but it's not going to be the same as like forcing you to talk in front of people, knowing you're talking in front of people, and then once you
Right.
do it, you'll realize it's not that big of a deal. It's not that hard, and there's not like there'll be a few hundred people that will listen, but it's not like I don't know, which to
You're
me is not that many anymore. But
Yeah, you're not facing
um,
them either, so
right, you don't see
yeah,
them. You
right,
can still think about them naked, but it's not
right.
the same. So,
Well, I wanted to
so
thank you for offering it.
sure.
I know you're really busy, and it was really awesome of you to do. So,
Yeah, sorry to move things around on you, but I appreciate you being patient.
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, just the quarantine. What else? I gotta be patient, right? I'm just kind of
I
used
lose.
you're used to it now.
Yeah, like I still like I have the next couple weeks to just kind of putter around, but like I still get lost on what day it is because I work from home now, and so it's like I'm just so I don't know if you have that same experience where you're just in the same place at the same time all the time, and so like you look up and you're like, oh, it's Thursday. No, 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 it's Saturday.
Yeah, yeah. I actually a few weeks ago, I am working one job 2 hours a week. That's it right now. So I showed up on the wrong day.
Oh
I
no.
was like, yeah, I usually go in every Tuesday, and then I showed up on a Monday, and I usually get my packages delivered to that office. So I got a package. So my boss was like, "Oh, I thought you just came in to get your package." He's like, "It's Monday, right?" And I was like, "Is it?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, he's like, "Did you go out last night, or did you party at your house, or like what is going on?" I'm like, "No, dude, they all run together. Not I mean, I haven't not worked a job in 20 years. Like the last 20
Right.
years I've had two jobs, three jobs. I've never just not worked 2 hours a week. It's just so surreal, and it's just I don't know what day it is. So I've totally had that experience.
It's
Everybody
got
in
to
the
be
office was like, it's Monday, right? I was like, no, I don't. That's why I'm here, because I thought it was Tuesday.
yeah, so it's got to be tough, and I know that's part of why we're talking today because you want to set up a podcast and get something to do, maybe eventually get some income coming in. So like, why don't you tell
Yeah,
everybody
for
and
sure.
me what's happening?
So a friend of mine actually just kind of threw it out there a few months back and was like, "Hey, does anyone want to start a podcast?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that'd be kind of cool." And just kind of thinking of different things of okay, what would be our niche, and trying to perfect it and whatnot. And so he moved to Utah, and he stopped drinking for a little bit, and he started drinking non-alcoholic beer, which I thought was kind of weird. So, right? But I'm like, okay, Utah's got some crazy alcohol laws in general. So I'm like, all
Right.
right, maybe he just wasn't cool with the laws there and was like, I'll just go non-alcoholic. But he was telling me that he's like, no, craft breweries are actually coming out with non-alcoholic beers. It's not just St. Pauli's and the ones that you just heard of when you came into the bar, like O'Doul's.
Right.
You're like,
Right.
O'Doul's and St. Pauli's, and that was it. And the whole connotation of who drinks non-alcoholic beers in bars. You're like,
Right. Like it's some
are they
middle-aged.
alcoholics or
Yeah.
yeah, oh, yeah. So he's like, no, they're coming out with IPAs and whatever. And I thought okay, that would be a real just finding weird things in your life to talk about. And that kind of gave
Right.
me the idea of okay, he's kind of socially awkward. Like, I don't know if I'm socially awkward, but I'm awkward. I think everybody has that weirdness to them, that
Sure.
everyone's weird in their own sense. And I totally when you are on the pat down too, sometimes when both Dion and Ms. Pat are dude, where did your brain go? And I'm like, dude, I was so on point with Chris. Like, I don't know if it's a white thing or what, but I was like, dude, I totally thought she was talking about that too. Like,
I
so I
know.
mean,
That's the
we
weirdest
all
thing
have
is
this.
that I like I don't know if it's just like different cultures or what, because but I get a lot of people like the baby thing on the most recent episode. Like people go,
Mhm.
"That's exactly what I thought she said too." So I'm so glad we
Yeah,
clarified
that's
this
what
because
I
I
thought
thought she
too.
had
I was like,
a
dude, I
baby
thought she
in the
had a
closet.
baby in the closet. Like, I was like, what? How do you have a? And I'm thinking, like, dude, is it like in like a mason jar? Like I thought it was like like in those specimens, like a
Right.
frog, like in like a formaldehyde or whatever, just like float. I'm like, dude, she has a baby in the closet in a mason jar, and I was like, what? And then I was like, okay. And like I grew up in California. I'm not like totally like Southern California. I'm exposed to everything here, but my
Right.
brain totally went to like baby in the closet, and I was like, that's just that I've never heard of anybody keeping their like miscarried baby in their closet. Like that's
Yeah,
insane.
so if anybody isn't is that's listening that doesn't know, I'm on the Pat Down podcast. She should check out with comedian Miss Pat, and she said she had her miscarriage in the closet, and she meant a photo, and I thought she meant like in a jar. So it was a very awkward moment. Um, and make sure you go follow that. Make sure you follow both of us on Stereo, and follow Mimi, and help her out and follow her, and maybe we can get her 100 extra bucks by getting her a
All
bunch of new
right.
follows. So yeah, like I don't know. I think that's one of the cool things about broadcasting is that you think that you're alone, and then when you say something out loud to thousands of people, like you hear how normal you are. It's sort of like why therapy's so great, because you think I'm such a freak, and then you go to therapy and you're like, your therapist says, no, I've had 14 people feel that same way today. So, that's sort of what the great thing about podcasting is, that it allows broadcasting is, if you're on traditional media, there's a lot of rules, but with podcasting, you can talk about crazy, weird shit and life circumstances that you may not get to talk about like on commercial radio, because on commercial radio, we're always just trying to, get the ratings and keep you listening and refresh, and it just sort of gets in the way of the conversation sometimes. So that's the cool thing about podcasting, is that you can have the kind of conversations that you really want to have.
Yeah, and I was so late to the game on podcasting. Like when podcasting first came out, I was like, why would I want to listen to someone talk? Like I totally had that like that whole like mentality of it. And literally like the last year, like I haven't listened to the radio at all. Like I literally just plug in my iPhone to my car and just put on a podcast. Like, and I went to Utah like twice, during this pandemic. I have some family there. And literally just plug in like 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast, like 3 podcasts, and I'm there in Utah. Like
Yeah.
it's just like something to keep you like oh, it's so interesting. And I'm like I told you, I was such a nerd. Like I love the library, I love to learn, like so I just
You're
think I'm
nosy.
weird. So yeah, I'm super nosy. Yeah. So
I think but see, I think our culture has kind of made people. I noticed this about 5-6 years ago. There's an insecurity running through our culture that causes us to kind of put ourselves down, and we don't. Nobody wants to be because when we were growing up, it wasn't cool to be the nerd. Now it's different
right.
for kids that are going to school K through 12 now, like the nerd and Big Bang Theory, like Revenge of the Nerds was the nerd avatar when I was going to K through 12.
Yeah.
And so I still feel like there's this thing where people are really curious and really interested in learning and really interested in knowing a lot of stuff, but they don't want to talk about that, and because they don't want to seem like a know-it-all or any of that kind of stuff. And so I like don't have that problem. Like I will tell you that I'm a know-it-all. Well, like I love to read. I like books. Like, and I just think more people, if they like books and like learning, should just be open about that stuff, because then we can kind of change the culture away from feeling like, I'm really intensely nerdy or dorky on this one subject, and I don't want anybody to know. And I feel like it is getting better, but it's such a cool thing. Like, and that's the great thing about podcasting. I think that's the big reason the revolution has taken place within media. It's that you have. I listened to Rogan talk about coyotes for 2 hours, and I was fascinated the whole time. You know, I didn't know I cared about coyotes. So you can niche down. Like, I'm really into cults right now, so I'm listening to cult podcasts and watching cult documentaries. So, did I lose you
Oh,
there?
did I get you? Yeah, sorry.
So did I
Sorry, I
just
got
talk
you.
for like 2 minutes and you didn't hear anything I said?
Sorry, yeah.
Poor baby broadcaster. You're like, oh my God, I have
I
to
was
fill
like, oh
time.
my God, I lost them. I already like fucked up.
No, I was just saying that. Like, I think I don't know where you lost me, but like I was just saying, like when we grew up, it wasn't cool to be a nerd, and I think people are really curious and really interested in a lot of stuff, and like the ability to niche down compared to conventional broadcasting. Like, I'm really into cults right now, and so I can download 2 or 3 cult podcasts and dive in, and and then you may be into like a, like Rogan talked about coyotes for 2 hours. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah.
So I've always been into talk radio. I've always been into podcasts. Like from day one, I started podcasting in 2007. Like, it's just I'm just glad the rest of the world's kind of going, this is great. How can we fund all this? So because it's just a ton of fun. Uh-oh, I think your internet may have fuzzed out. So if you have a question, actually, I think I need to
Yeah,
turn off.
someone keeps like calling. I don't know, like I said I
Oh
get
yeah,
these calls or something like from
you don't
Seattle.
you don't
Like
want to.
I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
supposed to
don't tap
answer
that.
that. Okay, I was like
Yeah, don't tap that. Make sure you now you can leave a message. There was like the moderation thing. I turned that off. So if you have a question.
Okay.
So, anyways, you want to start a podcast? Tell me what kind of podcast. Go maybe a little more in depth, and then like where you're at. What do you want to do?
Okay, so as I kind of said before, like our niche is just going to be talking about like weird experiences, weird places, weird food. Um, turn that off. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, your internet I think is maybe weak.
Okay. Okay. I was like, I don't know how to turn that off. It's like, okay, someone keeps calling me. Um, so basically like he moved to Utah. We had, the beer thing and I was like, okay, what else? And then uh Utah has weird food too. So I was like, okay, we could just do weird food, weird experiences. I worked at, Disney. He worked at Disney, like weird, interactions that we've had. I mean, I've 20 years at Disney. There's a lot of weird stories I could talk about like forever at Disney. But yeah, so just kind of like that. And then trying to make a couple of like YouTube videos to correspond with the podcast also, like trying the non-alcoholic beers, going when I was in Utah, we went to this like island in the middle of Utah that had like buffalo on it and like antelope. And that
That's
I
cool.
like almost hit a buffalo and an antelope. I was like freaked out. But like, yeah, so we kind of did like a little short video there and I want to learn video editing and I just want like all this knowledge to like but I feel like I want the podcast to be so perfect that I just keep going over and over and over everything. Oh, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do that? And then I think now it's just like just do it. So I've been trying to go back to podcasts like they're older like first second episodes of podcasts I listened to now and like okay they weren't like perfected when they first started so
No.
yeah so I think I
No,
just
and
need to get
the
out
thing
of
that
that mind scope.
yeah, let's start there because most of the podcasts, like you may not know this, but like the people, like let's take Jordan Harbinger. I've seen him on the app. Like he's a really well-known podcaster. Love his show. That's not his first show, the Jordan Harbinger show. Like, and most podcasters who are at the top of the charts, that's not their first show. I've done 10 different podcasts over time, and so me from the pat down, but I've done thousands of hours of podcasting by the time I get to a big podcast. And so there's no there's no likes, there's no, it's like I've got that rep. So like if you're like, I think I've done like 3,000 podcasts at this point. You can't compare yourself to somebody who has those kind of reps. It'd be like comparing your swimming skills to Michael Phelps, or your singing skills against Beyonce. And so what I find a lot in new creators is that they are tending to compare themselves to the people they really love and the people they want to emulate, but they don't realize that they're starting, that person started from 0 to and was horrible. If you listen to like the Beatles anthology, they're not great at the beginning of the Beatles anthology, and by the end they're geniuses because they're just so obsessed with their craft. And so you're gonna suck at the beginning, but the good part is nobody's gonna be listening to you. If you're starting your podcast and it's on like the Podcast One network and they drive 10,000 people to your first podcast and it's day one, like that's not gonna go well. But that's not where you're at. And so this is, any creative work demands of its artist or creator a period of time to get better at the craft, to focus on the craft. And the way that creative arts of any kind weeds people out is that you don't make money in the beginning. And that's part of the tough part in the situation that you're in, and is that you've got to start from zero, kind of self-fund a few things, and monetization is going to take a little bit to get there because you don't know your voice yet. And once you kind of find your voice, that's when you're going to really start to click with people. They're going to donate, you're going to find that monetization piece. And so just keep in mind that comes, but there is a period where you're going to do this and it's not going to make you money, but I've got some recommendations that'll kind of help keep it really cheap for you, because I know that you're in a tough situation. So, don't worry about how bad you think you are, because I can tell you, and we talk about this in like the next episode or two of the Pat Down, I literally leave every Pat Down thinking that I just sucked and I was mean and like I did a terrible job. Like I don't get nervous to do shows anymore because I have proven to myself that I am good at this stuff. But like I'm always doubting everything. I don't like my voice. I don't like the way that I did this, or, I wish that I hadn't wasted this, or like, there's always going to be those doubts. It's the imposter syndrome. Miss Pat talks about how she doesn't think she's there yet. And it's like, dude, you're the funniest comedian on the planet. How do you not realize how talented you are? And so that's always going to be there. It's always going to prevent you kind of from starting unless you realize that that's perfectly normal, reasonable, and you just kind of start. But like the Disney thing is like a really cool, fun angle. You got to think about making sure that the mouse doesn't come after you, because I know that they're very litigious, but like if whatever ways you can talk about your time at the park and like the fun aspects, and like as long as you don't put Disney down, then I'm sure they're going to be fine with it. But or don't use their branding like in your podcast logo. But I think like stories from the castle, or something along those lines, where you're not using their stuff. Like I think I'd love to know get the guy who's in the costume, talk to him, like what are your craziest stories from when you wore the Pluto costume, or there's interesting stuff like that is going to appeal to people. That's where I like your idea, and I think it's got that's your hook to kind of get people in the door, crazy, behind the mouse with Mimi, that sort of thing. And you don't have to stick to just the Disney stuff, nor should you, but that is going to be kind of like a selling feature in the beginning until you kind of get a few episodes or a dozen episodes in and you kind of go, oh, okay, this is what this thing is. A point where you're going to start doing a podcast and you have a vague idea, but by like episode 20 or episode 30, you're going to go, oh, this is what this is. Great. And then that's when you like really start to think about your branding and do I need a logo? And like you want a logo just get on Canva and make something on Canva initially, that looks kind of nice. But don't spend any money, obviously, on a logo or branding or any of that kind of stuff. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just keep it as simple and as cheap as possible to make sure you like doing it. 59% of podcasts in the Apple directory are vacant, and I think the number's less than 50% of them have less than 4 episodes. And it's
Wow.
because people start it and they go, this is a lot of work. Like podcasting becomes a second job. It becomes a passion, and it becomes a lot of work. And if you're not passionate about it, you're not passionate about your subject, you're not going to put in 10 hours a week. I mean, it's going to be 10 to 20 hours a week. I have put 20 hours a week into We Are Libertarians and the Chris Spangle Show and my podcasts. I put 5 a week in for Miss Pat. That takes like real commitment when you've got a life and a job and all that kind of stuff. And so you're fortunate in that this is kind of a good time for you to focus on this. It'll give you something like a nice outlet, but don't spend money for the first like 6 months of a podcast, just other than like a good microphone, and maybe a host if you need it, but start it, see if you like it, and then go from there, and then start building it piece by piece. Because the other problem that they will tend to go, I can't release this until I read these 3 rules from some podcast answer man online, and they have this checklist, and if I don't meet this checklist, and if I'm not perfectly happy with it, we can't launch. And then the podcast sits on the shelf for 5 years and it never goes anywhere. And like, that's not how it works. And like, it's literally just bolt the wing. Like today, I've had this one podcast that I just am on my 3rd website. Like, I was like, oh, I really like this. The past 2 have not been working for me. And then I found this thing and I switched it and I changed it. I upgraded. I didn't wait till I had the perfect website for the podcast. I did that going into year 2, so it's, don't let you just got to ship it. Like, you just got to ship, and then like, think like an app, Facebook releases the app and then they do consistent updates to stuff. So, all right. So
Yeah, I
I'm
think that was
rambling here, but
no, no, no. Like I totally get what you're saying. That I feel like I was just trying to like, okay, I need this and this, and I would go on all these sites, like how to start a podcast, how to publish, how to do this, how to do this. It's like, oh my God, like, do I need all this? Like, and that's why like I listened to the stereo with Aja, and then I was like, you didn't talk about hosting. What if I need a host? Do I need a host? Does the host like send it to Apple? Do I need to send it to Apple? Like, I was just like, so like, I mean, I would try and read everything, but I was like, what if I just emailed him and was like, okay, how does the podcast hosting like work? Like, I think that would probably be the only thing I would probably spend a little bit money on, because I mean, the free sites are nice, but I don't know if you watch The Social Dilemma, but obviously if something's for free, you're the product and blah, 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 blah. Like,
yeah. So the most popular one out there, and if you want to hear my conversation on podcasting with Aja, go download the Chris Spangle Show at wearelibertarians.com. The thing with free hosts is that, yeah, you get what you pay for. Anchor is kind of the most popular. And I mean, here's the thing about hosts. There's no right or wrong answer. Like, there's a lot of really good hosting companies. There's the free tier like SoundCloud and Anchor, and they have a certain set of features. And then there's like the next tier, which is like Fireside or Spreaker or Blueberry, or Libsyn. And then there's like the premier tier where I'm on Megaphone, Miss Pat's on Megaphone, there's Art19, there's Audio Boom, and so that first tier is free. That second tier is anywhere from $7 to $30, and then that next tier is over 100 or more, depending on how many listeners you have. And so, but every host gives you a ton of different features. And with Anchor, you have like an editing thing, and then with Spreaker you can go live, and then with Fireside, they have like a really nice website, or there's, Casted, which has features for business to business people. So there's really no right or wrong. Like Blueberry, Fireside, Libsyn, these are all good hosts, and you're not going to go wrong with whichever one you pick. I personally have used Fireside forever. I was a big fan of the 5x5 network and the podcast method, and the guy that built Fireside, his name's Dan Benjamin. And he really put into that host for $20 a month everything intuitively that you're going to need as a podcaster. It's super reliable. I really like fireside.fm a lot. But let's say you personally like the features of Libsyn or Blueberry or Buzzsprout. You're not going to go wrong with that kind of stuff. So, and even if you want to start out on Anchor or SoundCloud and just kind of get it going. Now, here's why I would think about just do a little investigation between an Anchor or a Buzzsprout. I would say Fireside's the one that I always recommend because they just have the most complete set of features for the cheapest price. And the biggest drawback that most podcasts have is they can't build a website. And Fireside gives you like a free website that looks good, and you can have a blog on there. Like they help you submit to directories in the back end. They kind of it's laid out very easily. So I have a network of shows, and all my shows are on Megaphone, and all my network shows are on Fireside. And that's because they're not technical people and they can use Fireside easily. And I'm technical and I want other high-end features like promos and ads and stuff like that. And so that's why I go with Megaphone. And so these guys, one's like a rebar salesman and logs in there and can work it like it's a back end of a Facebook page. So that's why I like Fireside. Like Libsyn is kind of it was the gold standard back in the day.
Right.
But they didn't keep up their tech, and so like their front page still kind of looks like it did 5 years ago for your website. Even Megaphone has kind of an atrocious public website for your podcast. So that's why I always recommend them, and it's $20. So it's not a huge, burden. But let's say you want to cut that down to 7. Spreaker is like free to try kind of, and Spreaker has like a lot of really good features and a good website, and that's $7. I think I pay $7 for that. So, and they help you kind of intuitively add stuff. It's not as easy to use as Fireside, but like not by much. So like if I'm, long story short, start with Fireside, take a look at Spreaker, Spreaker, and then Anchor, and see what you like from that.
What would you suggest as the main feature for a beginner podcast for the hosting site? Like, what is the main feature that you would want from your hosting site?
I mean, the bottom line is the host, and they all kind of do the same thing. They just put the audio in the cloud and make sure that it's always available. It's not, when I started my podcast, it was in the back end of my website, which is like the worst way to do it. But there wasn't, like, I couldn't afford a host, and there wasn't really like good hosting. Like, to get podcast hosting in 2012 was $60-$70 a month on Libsyn, and I just couldn't do it. And so I hosted it on the back end of my Bluehost shared server, and we took down all kinds of websites when we had like one big episode with Ron Paul in 2013, and like we got in trouble. So they're like, it's so easy now, and they all kind of do the same thing. So the most important thing is sound quality. It needs to sound good. So a good microphone is key, and I always recommend the Audio Technica 2100. It's like 70, 80, 90 bucks, maybe $100. And some of the biggest podcasters use that microphone because it's just a microphone and it doesn't pick up a bunch of noise. Everybody recommends the Blue Yeti. I think that sounds horrible on a podcast. It's built for gaming. It's not built for podcasting, so it picks up the room noise, and that's not something you want for a podcast. So you want the dynamic mic that is the Audio-Technica 2100, not the condenser mic of the Blue Yeti. So that's number one. Like, that's key. If somebody tunes in and it sounds like bad Zoom audio, there's a less of a chance they're going to stick around. It doesn't matter how good your guest or story is. You know, if it's not good, they're not. That's always been the key fund. Like, I've spent 30 grand easily on audio equipment over the years because it was super expensive the first 10 years that I was podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's for less than $5. You know, for $100 you can sound great, but if you want a whole setup, it's going to cost you less than $1,000. Like, it's. But I spent a lot of money and got a lot of donated equipment because I'm obsessive about the sound of it. I think it has to sound good. And that's been like the selling feature for my podcast versus other libertarian podcasts. And, you know, that for the longest time. Second is, it has to look nice. Like, your artwork has to be attention grabbing, colorful. Like, it has to look good and be clear. Like, good podcast artwork cannot be understated, because if somebody searches libertarian, I have really good artwork, and I paid $1,500 for an art package for me and my other network hosts, like, which was a really big chunk of money for me, but it just made all the difference in the world this past year, you know, and I got some audience donations to help offset that cost too. So my audience helped pay for it, because it's just, you search libertarian, you're going to pick the prettiest artwork. If you search cult, you're going to pick the prettiest, clearest artwork, right? So, you know, like,
something that grabs your attention.
Yeah, there's a ton of podcasts, but like, it's based on keyword search. There's only like 3 or 4 podcasts in any keyword search you do that look nice, that seem consistent, that have a big catalog, that, like, you know, you can Google politics and there'll be a lot. But if you Google libertarian, you're going to get like 10 choices. The rest are all their dead shows, or their bad artwork, bad sound. You know, your competition isn't as deep as you think.
Okay. That was the other thing, was you mentioned like looking good and like Zoom audio. So my co-host and I are obviously in different states. Like, what would be your recommendation for if we wanted to do video? Like, what would be your recommendation of like a video, or should we just video our own screen and record it like through QuickTime or whatnot, and then try to edit it?
We're blessed, like, to have the Zoom revolution of 2020. Like, try having a 75-year-old economics professor try to figure out Skype in 2014. It's impossible. You know, now everybody knows how to Zoom. I use 2 things. I use StreamYard and I use Zoom. StreamYard's pretty expensive, and so I would just pay for the $15 package for Zoom. It's got good latency, it's got good quality, it records the audio. Like, you know, Skype is kind of what we always used, but then when Zoom came along, about a year, I was paying for Zoom about a year and a half before COVID hit, because in podcasting that kind of became the standard, because they have good audio, good video, records all of it, you can schedule stuff. It's like a really decent product. So I just stick to Zoom, record to the cloud, gives you an MP4 that you can then, you know, load into like Audacity to edit, and away you go.
Okay, that was like, because like when I first thought of Zoom, I was like, man, is the audio like okay on Zoom, or is it not okay on Zoom? Like, I don't know if before it wasn't okay and now they've upgraded it, but I just kept hearing things that it was just not a good way to use. So I guess that
It
that really like
it's there's snobs everywhere, and yes, audio is important, and so if you should have a good microphone. But if you can't afford a microphone, lean into the mic on the computer as close as you can for until you can afford a microphone. Like what people will do is they'll like do phone recordings and like set the phone down in the middle. Like, I'll talk to
um,
people and they'll go, okay, should I just set my phone in the middle of this table and then we do a podcast? No, you're recording a voice memo. You're not recording a podcast that way.
yeah.
And so, people are more forgiving now than they were this time last year of Zoom audio on podcasts. But there's still like your competition like in 2015, there's so many podcasts, I guess, at this point, because it's become an industry. So like 2015, my podcast was top 1% of podcasts and we had like no numbers. We were like 2,500 an episode. Now we're almost double that, more than double that, and we're not even in like if we're in the top 98, like the top 90%, I'm not sure. Like
Yeah.
if I'm in the top 100% of, it just doesn't even chart. It wouldn't chart because there's so many podcasts. Because how do I compete with Dax Shepard? How do I compete with Joe
Right.
Rogan? Well, the way that you compete is that you niche down. You will build first an audience out of your social media circles, your friends, your family, the people who
Hmm.
just kind of want to support you and check it out. And if you've really prepped and done a good job of kind of thinking through those first few episodes, you'll get them. Your immediate family will probably not listen. If I don't, most
I don't
immediate
know. My
family,
dad is like so excited. Like he's like, "Oh, let me know, let
cool.
me know." I was like, "I don't think you
It's
want to hear
cool.
what I want to say, Dad, but okay."
Well, Dad, the first one's about doing acid on an orgy trip.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
like. But yeah,
but
he's just like, "Oh, let me know." Like constantly texting, like, "Have you started yet? Did you publish yet? What do you need?" Like, I'm like, "Dad, like, I'm so like lost right now. I just need to
that's
like
cute.
get it done and like do it,
Yeah.
So, he's just retired, so he needs something else to like listen to or whatever. So he's trying to
Yeah,
figure out.
it's a slow build, and it starts with your immediate circles, and then it starts with word of mouth. And the first year, if you're hitting 100, 200 people, that's really, really solid. If you're
Mhm.
still at like 5 people after the first year, then maybe, it's not going to happen. But
Yeah.
most people don't. That's not how it works. Like it's really kind of crazy. If you are consistent and keep improving your quality, I've just seen most people can't help but grow in their audience as long as if your audio quality is good, you're consistently posting, and you're working on your skill set and upgrading kind of the different pieces of this stuff, you'll grow and it'll work and you'll build an audience. And it just takes time. And it's sort of like if you want to do a weightlifting competition, it's going to take you a period of months or years to get your body to a place where you can compete in a good place. But like you're going to have to do the reps. You're going to have to be disciplined to succeed in getting into that competition. It's the same sort of thing with any type of creative work. So, the audience starts out small, but that's where you want it because you're just starting out. And the way that you kind of build audience quickest is that you have a niche or you have a hook. If you start with your
Hmm.
first description, your description and intro should sort of match, and the description on the podcast and then on the website and all that stuff should all kind of match. And, you know, uh, you say, tune into this podcast about my life. I'm going to tell crazy stories. Like, would you as a listener really, like, would that hook you? But if you
Hmm.
say, you know, I'm going to teach you some life lessons that we learned behind the scenes at Disney. Okay, well, now I'm going to
Yeah.
get some like cool, fun stories from Disney, and you're going to teach me some things that might make me think. So there's what the mistake that people start out with is they start a podcast because they want to talk about themselves, but your audience doesn't really care about you. Your audience cares about what they get out of listening to you. Audiences are very selfish, and I'm just very obsessive about, like, what are you, if you honor me with an hour of your time, what are you going to get out of that investment? Because you have a lot of options, and if you're going to give that hour to me, I want to make sure that I, like, give you something of value, or have an aha moment, or you get a laugh that you're not going to get other places, or you're going to get an opinion that makes you think, oh, I never saw it that way. So, that's really, like, the secret to it is, what's the differentiator between you and other people? What's the thing that is going to feed your audience? That, listen, like, and I'm not saying, like, avoid talking about yourself, because you are obviously going to be an interesting person. Like, people want to get to know Miss Pat. They want to hear about her. They want to, like, invest in her, but you're listening because she makes you laugh. You laughing is the thing she is really selling. That's why you keep coming back. And so, a lot of people, just new podcasters, kind of make that mistake of, like, I've been told I'm funny at work and I'm interesting, so I'm going to do this. And lots of people, like, and that's you will eventually learn what it took me 7-8 years to learn, and is that me talking into the microphone isn't as important as me talking into the microphone prepared to give my audience something of value. So I'm saving you 8 years of making a fool of yourself. Like I did.
Thank you. Maybe just 2 years of making a fool of myself before I get on the path.
Don't worry about it. You will, but
I'm glad that you brought up the time, like an hour of your time. So, like, I was thinking, like, just starting out simple, like, is like a 30-minute, like, just to try and, like, get each episode kind of, like, going, and then eventually, like, get into that hour? Or would you suggest, like, an hour as, like, the basic?
No, with time, there's no right or wrong answer, like, unless it's less than 10 minutes. Like, there has always been this, like, school of thought that podcasts should be less than 10 minutes, and I don't know how many of those you listen to, but I don't. I mean, like, they're in the early days of podcasting, that was the thing. It's like, it's got to be 20 minutes. And then, at the time, I was doing 2 or 3 hour conversations with people, and I'd be told this by, like, consultants, and I'm just like, well, I don't think I'm the wrong one, because my audience is growing, And then Joe Rogan came along and saved the industry from ever hearing that, like, it needs to be less than 15 minutes, because, in broadcasting, people drive in their car 20, 30 minutes to work, and so they have a very, like, short time span, and so there's always been this confusion about length, and, as usual, the longer is better. I think anywhere from, like, starting out 20 to 30 minutes is probably good, because you don't know how to create material totally yet, and so you don't want to burn it. And so if you have, like, this really good story, you don't know totally what to do with it yet, and so you don't want to burn this great story and then feel like I've got to fill the rest of this time, and so I'm just going to kind of, like, meander off into non-germane things. And so like, and that's why we were doing 3-hour podcasts, is because we would have a topic and then we'd end up 15 different places, and people just stopped listening because, like, it wasn't relevant. People pick an episode to listen to based on the title because it's relevant to them. And, if you promise a podcast on immigration and you're talking about, like, Hitler documentaries, then they go, well, I want to hear about immigration. I don't care about Hitler documentaries. Right. So, so if you have, like, this tight, 20-minute story that you've written out or worked out, then keep it at 15, 20, 30 minutes. Don't feel the need to get up to an hour. But if you have a co-host and you guys are having an awesome conversation, Like, don't cut it down into, well, shoot, this was a great conversation. We're not done with it, but I'm only supposed to do 20 minutes. So, no, let the conversation run its course. Like, sometimes it's a 40-minute conversation, sometimes it's an hour and a half, but there's consistency is key, but in the beginning, just try a bunch of different stuff and see what feels right, what works for you. As long as you're just like reminding yourself to edit, go, all right, I don't need this.
Right. Yeah. Done. Cut it out.
Right.
So, yeah. And then my other question was, obviously video is a huge thing right now, for podcasts. Like, would you suggest just starting as audio and then working your way to video, or just if you're like a beginner like I am, where I don't have a lot of video editing experience, and just kind of trying like perfect the audio editing first and then head to video?
Yeah, so I think that YouTube is actually a big podcast host, and people don't realize this
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of work firewalls will block podcast app for whatever reason, but they won't block YouTube. This is the explanation I've gotten from my audience. Like, so I actually pump through a service, I automatically transfer the RSS to the YouTube. So like, you go to like Miss Pat's YouTube channel, you'll see the audio stream because people listen to a lot of podcasts, or they'll put it on their Roku app or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
if that's the case, why not? Like, I submit to as many directories as possible. Why wouldn't I submit to the second largest search engine, that is YouTube? And build an audience there with video if I can. And so the best way to, like, if you edit video, if you can do graphic design, you can build websites, you can do anything in the Adobe suite, you will never not have money, because you can always get on Fiverr. Like, I've got a friend who's kind of hitting some tough times, but he can do graphic design and websites. And I'm like, you're not poor. You're just not on guru.com or Upwork or Fiverr, because you can
Yeah.
make money. Like, you can print money if you can, so if you can learn to edit video, do it, because that can be a great, you start like I started charging friends $300 to edit wedding videos, or, I was really forced into video editing at my current job, and I didn't want to learn it, but now I'm like subpar at it, and I'm glad, because I can do so many more things for my podcast and them, and it's great. So I would Zoom, record the video, record the
Mm-hmm.
audio, post the video and audio, and like, in the beginning, just throw the video up of the conversation. And if you want to play around with editing video, then do it. Like, I do live to tape. I don't give myself that safety net of editing the ums
Mm-hmm.
and the ahs. And like, the first year that I podcasted, I realized every hour of audio was taking me 2 to 2.5 hours to edit. And like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot
Because
of time.
an hour-long conversation sounds weird when you take out all the natural pauses and conversational pieces that new editors will take out. And so, like, the longer you go in podcasting, partially the host gets better and the chemistry gets better, but the less you end up editing, and the more you realize, I'm just going to edit straight to, I'm going to record live to tape. So, your audio and your video, there shouldn't really be too much editing. There's, like, for the pat down, only 1 or 2 edits every episode, and that's because, someone will say the name of their
She'll
ex,
say
and then we
something.
have to,
Yeah, right.
yeah, right, and then we have to cut out the
You're
name of
like,
the ex, so, but that's very minimal, and I just think that's the goal. Like, the goal is to do less production on the back end, because you've got the first part right. And so I do live sound mixing, I do live, lower thirds on the video. So when I'm done with a podcast, like, I'm literally chopping off the ends, titling it, description, upload, distribute it, we're done. Because it's
Yeah.
live streamed, and all the elements are already there, and that's keeps me sane. So, but you don't get there until you kind of learn what looks good and where to place stuff. So, yes to video. It's not a requirement,
Okay.
but if you have the desire that you have, you should do it and play around with it, and you don't have to post it if it's not good.
That is true. When you talk about distributing, so does your hosting site distribute to the directories, or you have to just go to the directories to submit?
Some of them will, like Fireside, for instance, you push a button, it'll submit to some of the bigger ones.
Okay.
Like Google Podcasts will automatically crawl. Like some of it is just you push a button. I manually input everything because I'm very particular about organization, but for newer folks, take advantage of the tools that you get, through these podcast hosts that made it easy.
Okay. Yeah, that was the other thing. Is like, oh, now you have to submit it. Now you have to do this. I'm like, wait, I thought the host did that. I'm like, I'm so lost. But I think it's just like all the information at once is just like so much that you're like,
yeah,
what do I do? Like, and then like you said, the podcast just never gets launched because you're just so focused by all the details. And it's like, no, just talk this shit out and do whatever with it and put it out there in the universe and see where it goes. Like, I think
that's
I'm
exactly
finally at
right.
that point of like, all right, I just need to like get over all the bullshit and then just do it. Like, and I think like you doing the stereo has really helped, and I really appreciate it and given me a little bit more confidence and like, okay, I can do it. Even if, and that's why I said I was trying to go back to that earlier podcast and sounding, hearing how shitty they sounded. And it's like, okay, obviously they're getting their groove. Like, I just need to get in my groove. Like, that's all I need to do. So.
Yeah, no, there's no right or wrong. There's just the only wrong in all of this is to not do it, not start, to get stuck in that fear. Like that's the thing that, like every opportunity I've blown is because I just didn't go through with what I wanted to do. So yeah, I think there's, I'm actually just hit the link here. So there's like a million questions that we can go through.
Okay.
I had like the whole moderation link. It's a situation, Mimi. Yeah, like there's like Google's your best friend. When you get stuck, just go, how do I submit to Apple? Like that's how I learned how to do all this stuff. In 2007, the day after Thanksgiving, I set up my first blog. I learned WordPress over the weekend by like asking Google and YouTube the questions that I was stuck on. The help desk of Bluehost, was a lot better than it is then than it is now. And they walked me through a lot of shit. And so you eventually kind of, between Googling your questions, watching tutorials on YouTube, getting help from like the service that you're paying, like eventually you just sort of build a knowledge of how to do this stuff. So let's go through some of these questions from folks.
Right.
I'm sorry that we're just now getting.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about, but it's really funny. That's hilarious.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right on. Let's do it for the money. I mean, like, not that sounded wrong. Let's like holla for some dollars. That's better.
Never smoke weed
I'll
and get
holler
on stereo
from some dollars.
I just wanted to share my 2 cents. Listen, the monotone tone is like, it's real boring. I think if you were just shown that you were more passionate about podcast, I think you'd get a lot more listeners. And, take it with a grain of salt. I'm just trying to tell you that it's like, it's almost depressing, like listening to this. And man, I hope this helps you out.
Thank you very much.
Sound monotone?
No, he's talking about me. I have a sore throat, so like I'm not. I'm not
like,
talking
okay.
in the. Yeah. So I'm not talking the way that I would normally talk just because my throat hurts.
Hey, Chris Spangle. Hey, Awkwardly Mimi. This is Hez Griffin here of Featherbrain Podcast. So excited to see you here. Looking forward to hearing more about the content. So I'm just going to shut up and listen. Thanks so much for being here. See you around. Love you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
That was sweet.
I like chicken nuggets.
Thank you, Beck Hookie.
All right, yeah.
Going off what you said, man, all good sites, but I would still recommend Anchor as a beginning podcast, like just straight beginner, don't know what you're doing. It's free to use, and I think it's just a good tool just to get your podcast going, and then it kind of shoots your podcast out to other things, other different sites.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything wrong with Anchor. The challenge is a year or two into it, you're going to probably want to go to something else, and then you got to do the redirect, which is scary as hell the first time, but it's not a big deal. So, sometimes it's best like, all right, I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to learn this and stay here. And I've switched podcast hosts 3 times. And each time you kind of go from one podcast host to the next and change your RSS feed, it can be somewhat of a mess because then you have to go and update it in a bunch of different places. And that can be, if you're not technically proficient or disorganized, that can be kind of tough. So sometimes it's just like, Fireside worked for 8 years. It was like 8 years worth until it finally grew the podcast to a place where I needed something different. And I didn't totally need it. It's just I went to something that I can grow into now. And with Anchor, I don't know how easy it is to take your RSS feed somewhere else, but that's one consideration that I would kind of think about. But yeah, Anchor's built for new podcasters that want to just try it out, and nothing bad to say about it.
Yeah, that was my other. It's like, are the free ones going to keep your content, or it's going to be a little bit harder for you to move your content because it's free, so
Right.
you are the product for them. So that was my only issue with like the free ones. Is like I kept reading like, oh, they don't let you remove your content or whatever. Like I was like, well, I want to keep my content, like it's mine, right? So
Yeah,
that was the only, yeah.
That, like, if they don't offer what's called a 301 redirect, then you don't want to use them, because at some point you're gonna, let's say this turns into a years-long project that you're really passionate about. You're gonna want new tools, and you're gonna want to take your RSS feed with you. So, you can always take the content. Like Fireside will import from an RSS feed, for instance. So will Megaphone, but can you take your feed with you and redirect all the, let's say you've got 500 people on your podcast feed subscribed to it, that 301 redirect will automatically move them to the new host. And if they don't offer, so it's like a piece of code that will like switch your podcast feed. So when you update and refresh that feed, it goes, hey, we're not on Anchor, we're now on Fireside. Let's switch and update the RSS feed, and it does it automatically. So I'm trying not to be too monotone for Eric now.
That's okay. I don't think you're that monotone, but okay.
Thank you.
Or maybe because I'm like used to your voice, I listen to you like every week, so maybe, I don't know. Like
it's fun. I was feeling down, and then I listened to this guy talk about podcasting, and now I'm definitely going to commit suicide.
This is actually pretty dope information. I have a podcast called the G-Talk Garden Podcast, and I'm actually on Anchor right now, and we're on a break, and we're actually trying to switch over, and you've actually just gave me a very
Now it's stuck.
I'm sorry that last one got cut off, but I just wanted to say you gave me a lot of information on checking out different sites. I've looked at Libsyn and a couple of the other ones. I've never heard of Fireside, and I'm looking at their website now, and I appreciate you for the information. So I might even be switching to them, but keep giving out that information. I'm actually tuning in, and it's dope. Thanks for the info.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You can check out. So I don't talk about podcasting all the time. I usually talk about politics. It's the Chris Spangle Show. I am available if you want to hire me as a podcast consultant for, for basically what we've done here on Stereo. I do charge for it. You can check that out at leadersandlegends.net. Just a plug there. But thank you so much, and I appreciate it. But yeah, if you go check out the Chris Spangle Show in the feed, you may just search for podcasting. I've done several different kind of episodes. You'll kind of hear my thinking over the course of time, and eventually I'm going to put together a course or a website or something, because I love talking about this stuff. I am nerdy about it, so like I really do enjoy having these conversations.
Yeah, ha 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 ha.
All right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
The difference between you and other people is you're looking for the difference between you and other people. You're powerful. You're strong. You can do whatever you want to do. Don't look for no extra confirmation from nobody else. Believe in yourself and go forward with it. Yo, grab that day. Carpe diem, you know? It's all about manifestation. Speak it into fruition. Speak it like you can touch it. You can taste it. You can smell it. You know? You could jump in your pool. Seriously. Think that hard of it, like it's right there.
Yeah, like that's the weird thing about this, Mimi, is that you have to think about what your audience wants, but you can't care about what your audience wants, if that makes sense. Like so when we talk politics on the Pat Down, there's a large portion of the audience that gets super pissed because they either don't like my libertarian views, they don't like Miss Pat's, quasi-Republican Democrat views, and Dion's socialist. Like, people just get all mad about it when we talk social issues or politics. Like, we have to,
it's part of life, right?
Yeah, right. Like, at a certain point, you have to go, I don't care. But you don't do it every week out of respect for your audience, but you do have to go, like, I'm not going to be afraid of my audience. So, yeah, you have to, like, that's part of finding your voice as a podcaster or as a writer is saying what you want to say, doing it how you want to do it, keeping in mind that you have to honor the audience you're talking to, but not be controlled by them. That's the important thing is just, and it takes some work.
Let them meld you into like what they want. Like, yeah, basically, like I don't.
The person that gives you a 1-star review on Apple Podcasts, what they are saying is you're not for me. They're not saying you're not for everyone, and they don't ever write it that way. But that's how you have to remember it. Is like the person that took the time to say that, you're just not for them, and you're not going to be for everybody. But like that first, like month 3, 4, 5, somebody writes a stinging review or like sends you a crappy email or like you get your first piece of negative criticism and then all of a sudden you tailspin, you just got to remember, I'm just not for them, so and it happens, as the longer my career goes. Like I'm 20 years into radio and podcasting and writing and politics, no less. So like your first death threat's really scary, but the 14th is not, so, but that sting never goes away. Like it never, you
I worked at
always
Disney for 20 years. I've heard enough like criticism in my face, angry, customers, angry, like employees, like, believe me, I've gotten some tough skin over the 20 years of either people not liking me, not liking my answer, not liking the way I did my work. Like, I totally agree with, I totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
like
you
the
gotta
first
listen
time
to
you're
it.
like,
You just can't be controlled by it.
Right. You gotta just kind of stay in your own lane and be like, well, you're not in my car, so you're in the other lane, so you can go in that way, slow or fast, ahead of me or behind me, but you're not going to be with me. So
exactly. Yeah, you're good. Yeah, so it's a weird balancing act that I still sometimes don't. I'm getting better at. We got it. Damn, I got a few more. Okay.
Oh.
I assume you don't have anything to do.
No.
We can end if you need to.
Whenever you need to end is fine.
Okay.
How do you submit to Apple? You just bend over and you take it. You let Apple have its way with you. You naughty boy.
Meanwhile,
Everyone's
she
getting
said
into
that
the
when
Christmas spirit.
Yeah, we had 69 listeners when she said that.
So that E-Core guy that was talking a minute ago, y'all have like over 50 people in the room right now, and he has 2 followers.
Yeah.
So apparently monotone is working.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like, you know, you're not gonna connect with everybody. It's sort of funny, and I know that I can be monotone when I'm kind of like thinking and talking, but I'm not really monotone, or else I would,
Right.
You just gotta
We've all
brush
heard
it
you
off.
laugh.
That's right. If I were monotone, I'd be doing this, and then that would be really boring.
You guys are really entertaining. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Jeff Supreme.
Right.
Does that mean you have sour cream on your head?
You guys are really entertaining. Keep up the good work.
That's not, I didn't play that twice, but it did.
Oh, that's a double.
You guys are super entertaining. Keep up the good work.
It's like a remix, huh?
Is this the Libertarian Chris Spangle?
Yes, sir, Manny. That is the Libertarian Chris Spangle. We are Libertarians, the Chris Spangle Show, all that good stuff. So, how are you doing, Manny?
This is super, super cool. Thank you guys so much for getting on here. My name's Sierra. I run the Sierra Unraveled podcast. I just launched probably 4 months ago now, and I guess the biggest thing I could say is just, 1, have fun, and then 2, the second thing is take up his advice about getting that microphone, because I made the mistake and bought a condenser mic, and I spend a lot of time editing. I wish I didn't have to, but you kind of know quality is a good thing. You got to pay attention to it. But other than that, thank you guys so much for getting on here. I really appreciate it. And again, just get to it, get down and do it. Awkwardly Mimi, and you got it, girl.
Yeah,
thank you.
This is great practice too. Like, I would hit up Sierra Unraveled, or everybody go follow Awkwardly Mimi and see if she wants to do a stereo with you, because this is great practice for podcasting. Like, it's sort of podcasting. I think this is a cool app. Like, I really enjoy using this. Like, I think it's like, if you're a new to podcasting, like, when I do my shows, like, there's pressure to it and I feel a certain level. But when we do these stereos, or I come on here and talk with a friend, or with you or my friend Evan or Aja, like, there's not that same level of pressure to it. And it's just sort of like teaching you how to be conversational while broadcasting. So if you want to get into podcasting, this is a great place to just get some reps and try it out and talk to different people and get into uncomfortable situations, because you don't necessarily know what your dance partner is going to be, And so, yeah, I would definitely, Mimi, think about doing this, and, hit up, Candace, or, roll back prices, or our buddy Manny, and just do a stereo with them.
Or the chicken nugget girl.
Yeah, I did a stereo the other day with my friend Trisha, and we had this one guy who was had Chevy, Toyota, something car, and he had the craziest stories. Like, it's sort of like, I love the audience here and talking to people, because it's like talk radio. I haven't done local talk radio since 2008, and when you do a live show on an AM station, you get the nuttiest calls, like way beyond anything you've heard here, or like we'll hear on stereo. Like, old conspiracy boomers calling in, talking about, vaccines back in 2002. It's like that kind of. So this is a cool app. So I'd totally get on here, and like, you just don't need equipment or anything. You just get skills.
Yeah.
Like, it's really cool.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the stereos with Miss Pat also. Like how you're like, oh, I'm gonna edit that, and you're like, wait, I can't edit that because we're live. Like,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. But those are like,
Mm.
I think like the live interaction with the audience for the Miss Pat is really entertaining. Like, I really enjoy it. That way it's like kind of like she gets those questions, and even though like she'll get somebody's like the Scotland guy, like that was just hilarious. Like I didn't
Yeah.
understand what he said either, so but yeah, you gotta like listen, like what did he say? But props to Dion for that bagpipe though, because I was like, where is she going with this? Like, I don't know. It was, yeah.
It's hilarious. It's so funny.
But yeah,
So,
I
all right.
will do some extra like stereo conversations just to try and get a little bit more practice. So
Yeah, everybody go. Please follow Mimi. Give her a boost. New podcaster out there. Give her some followers, and currently laid off, and so if we can help get her up into that top 100, get her some money, that'd be great too. So please give her a follow. Well, any other questions for me?
I think that was it. You did like awesome for all my questions. Thank you so much for doing this and helping me out and helping the others. I'm glad people chimed in and said it helped them out too. So I'm glad our conversation was able to help others also.
Cool. Yeah, and please follow me because I plan on doing more of these and enjoy it, and love to hear from you guys. So, all right, Mimi, thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
You too. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.